Hello and welcome to Patched. I'm your host Paul James, and today I'm joined by the subject of this episode, Jay Parnis. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad.
The subject makes it sound like
it does,
you're going to be operated on or some sort of stupid
guinea
crap.
pig.
Yeah,
that type of shit. Wow.
We've all done it so far. So if you've not caught up with any of the other episodes from this month so far, I've interviewed Damo about his gaming history. Damo's interviewed me. Now we're doing the same for you. Little PSA for everyone from last week's episode. Pippa was I don't know if you've seen this yet. Pippa was bouncing around in the background of the video. She managed to destroy both her bed as well as a little stuffed pink elephant at the time. You saw it, like I had to steal. She was a nuisance in the entire episode. She's been sin binned for this episode. She's back outside. It's not happening again today.
Fair enough.
Blew her chance.
Well,
so
there you go.
Yeah,
minutes of fame over.
Yeah, that's it. Internet celebrity status is just.
Well, can't win them all, I guess.
All right, so we're going to kind of start right at the very beginning for you in terms of where everything kicked off.
Yeah, okay.
Do you recall what your first video game was?
Yes, Super Mario Bros. 3.
On
NES.
NES. Yeah, I thought I'd better double check in case it was All Stars.
Yeah, no. This is NES era.
And it instantly had you, or was it a kind of slow burn?
Well, because that was also the first game I finished as well.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
which is impressive for like.
Oh
for
no,
kids.
I was like 3 at the time. It was not. Believe me, it was not all my own.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
There was a lot of help from some.
I was gonna say because that's a massive achievement for like a.
Yeah, no.
Even kids approaching 10 years old, let alone someone who's 3 or 4.
No. I was very good at losing lives and like kind of maybe beating the odd level here and there. Being just super enamored by the whole sort of map and stuff.
Yeah.
And the design of the little sort of stompy Mario as he moves from square to square and that sort of stuff. And every now and then, I'd have one of my cousins, because I got a lot of elder relatives. My dad's the sort of the youngest of a family of 9, and or second youngest, sorry, of a family of 9 brothers and sisters, and they've all got lots of kids.
Yeah. So
I was over at sort of one of the cousins' place, and they would have been maybe nearing 20.
Yeah, okay.
So there was a definite big age gap there for me. So with that in mind, they would sort of come in, give me a whole bunch of extra lives through means that I didn't really quite understand, and then I'd be able to keep playing. And somehow, again, it's very, very old memory, but managed to get to the end, because I remember the sort of the end of it, and that was that. And then I got dragged home because I think it was one of those times where I think my little sister would maybe not have even been
at 3 years old. Yeah, she wouldn't even be on the scene yet.
Yeah, potentially not. So
maybe a year away.
Given
yours is the same age as mine.
Yeah, but you're
I'm a year younger than you. So yeah, I think that 91, 92 sort of ballpark
something
is what
like
you're
that.
talking about.
Yeah,
they're 92. So
yeah, so maybe in that sort of era. So
maybe they'd just be on scene, both of them.
I might have been pregnant at the time or something. I don't really know, to be honest with you. Or maybe it was.
I'm sure it wasn't a factor.
It might have even
when you were busy playing Mario.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't care, just shut up.
In fact, it might have been even just after that, and one of those sort of
shut
visits
up, Mum, I'm playing Mario.
Yeah. So it was definitely one of those circumstances where I would have been holding the family back because I was super interested in continuing to play, and maybe a bit of a tantrum here or there to keep playing, that type of thing.
As any good kid does.
Yeah, I've always been one where it's just games in hand, have to like
gonna try and pry it out of you.
Literally, yes, yeah. You would have a better time if I was a corpse and have like rigor mortis around the game controller to just snap it out of my fingers. Not even kidding. It's that was me as a kid for sure. So yeah, that's my sort of first game.
Where did things kind of develop from there?
Well, I guess there's our friendship from there, because you and I met when I would have been 4. Yeah, and you would have been 3.
I would have been 3.
Yeah.
We've known each other since kind of kindergarten years.
Yeah, so probably around prep grade 1, I think, was when we started like properly hanging out at each other's place. Maybe even grade 2, and because I remember
we only lived like 2 streets away. Even for little kids by foot, it was maybe 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Tops.
Yeah,
10 minutes if you were dragging your feet.
And the kindergarten was kind of dead centre.
In the middle,
So, and then there was a lot of that. I don't really remember a huge amount of I remember just having game envy, I guess, because the Game Boy would have been out and that would have been around at that time. And I was graced on my birthday in second grade, or grade 2, with the Atari Lynx.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which I've still got floating around.
Which I don't think I ever played of yours. So
I think I might have brought it to school once or twice, but it was a real endeavour because it's like 6 AA batteries or something ridiculous like that.
And they don't last long. And
not really, no. Maybe about as long as the Switch. Yeah. But that was the thing, it had full colour games. So, like, in terms of, like, a comparison, I guess the sprite art was probably better in the Game Boy in some area, like, depending on the game, like, game specific. So, like, I mean, you think of, like, some of the, like, well, I guess Game Boy Color came a little later, but even something along the lines of, like, a Metroid 2 or something,
I follow you.
Or like a Mega Man, Wily's Revenge, games like that. That looked pretty nice for what they were, but games on the Lynx were definitely more Atari looking. Yeah. But they had some decent animation and they were full colour backlit screens. So
now a lot of the memories I have of us kind of playing games from that point where we kind of met was
Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, but then also kind of early days 64 as well.
Well, yeah. So you were, I guess, that kid. In my childhood, you were the kid that kind of got all the games.
Not much has changed.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true.
But the only difference is now I have to pay it myself.
Yeah, true. But
much like stress of Angelica in our budget.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of that, I guess we kind of traded. Like after, I think that would have been around maybe grade 3, I guess. I think I came over here a lot, but I didn't really have anything of my own. At the time.
Well, if any of you have watched our Games Club episode for Secret of Evermore, like that's one we kind of referenced loosely because Damo was with us and we didn't want to just kind of dive into our own and just cut him out.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we spent a bunch of time kind of playing that and a few other similar sort of RPGs, which weren't even necessarily really your sort of jam, but that's...
No, not really.
If you saw my episode from last week, all I ever played back then was RPGs for the most part.
Yeah, whereas for me, I mean, I remember being a huge fan of Earthworm Jim. I remember you had a copy of that and like every second or third week.
I don't think I'd even played it until you actually came around like, what's this? Let's give it a go. And we
played. Because I remember, at the time there was the cartoon, which was...
I never saw, but...
The cartoon's actually really funny.
But
maybe back then, yeah. And that was sort of part of it, so... there was a lot of sort of humour there for me, so that was kind of where I came from with that. And obviously some of the like Mario Karts and Super Mario Brothers, and that was the sort of more like the actiony type stuff was where I sort of had a bit of fun. But there was definitely a lot of games that you and I would just sort of sit and play. It didn't really matter what the subject matter was.
Iggy's Wrecking Balls.
That was a 64 game. So that kind of leads on to where it sort of went from there, because maybe a year or two later, I think it would have been maybe grade 4. So what would that have been? What year? Maybe 97.
Yeah, we're starting 97, 98 sort of ballpark. Pokemon's coming out in this sort of window that you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, Pokemon was 96, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there was definitely a lot of that.
I think we were grade 4 or 5 when Pokemon first came out, because you...
Nah, it was earlier than that.
A rough time with a particular teacher that we had back then.
It was earlier than that.
Oh, okay.
It was definitely earlier than that, because I remember... because by then, like I was huge on reading gaming manuals. Yeah. Like, and I used to bring them to school and keep rereading them. And
yeah, when you were done with one, I'd grab it because I'd just pick up the game and start playing and didn't really read the books. Yeah. And when you'd walk in with them, all right, cool, because it's an opportunity to keep talking and reading the games.
But I remember definitely in grade 4 there was a lot of sort of Pokemon talk, and for some of the kids there was South Park talk, for usually the ones that had older siblings. Yeah, like the ones that had older siblings, like, hey, check out this edgy stuff, and then there was just a lot of... I remember playing
fart jokes.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and a few
for what was acceptable on TV at the time. But anyway, that I remember there was like anyone's Game Boy that I could get my hands on to play more of that game, I would, and Leafy the Bulbasaur was always my starting.
And I think it was through school. I think it might have even been through you that I learnt about like the Missing No thing, and and all
Yeah,
that sort of stuff,
I
and
don't
that
know
became a
where
bit of a
that
thing at school. It might have been one of your gaming magazines. It was fairly well.
You know what? It might have been because I did have a
Powers and those sorts
Nintendo
of
magazine
whatever
system.
we
Yeah,
had out here.
NMS. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I used to be a subscriber of that. I've still got some raggedy
still
old.
stashed in the closet.
Yeah. Even some like early 2000s hypers and stuff like that.
I got a couple little hyper clippings where I featured in like the writing.
Oh, really?
You write into them and they answer your question.
Yeah, right.
That's about it.
Yeah, I would have maybe a few years worth of hyper subscriptions. I think that was some of the old birthday or Christmas gifts. I'd get a subscription for a year and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously in grade 4 was when I got the old purple controller twin 64 pack, and then from there that was where the arms race started of kind of me getting games and you getting games and us trading games and sharing those sorts of experiences.
Good way of wording it. Because, I mean, you initially kind of started this arms race thing, like people are just getting more and more on the... Oh, hang on, just start swapping.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I say arms race, it was because I know for the
it absolutely wasn't like North Korea and America at the moment.
No, it wasn't. No, it was more
64s pointed at one another.
Yeah, no, it was more like the US and Mexico. Because one of them got lots of games and the other one got a game maybe every now and then. Sorry to all of our
topical,
for all of our Mexican fans. Just don't worry, I built a wall. It's fine. Anyway, that's kind of what it was. Because I remember in that 64 era, because you had a lot of Super Nintendo games that would sort of come in from like either your aunties or your grandmas or you would have them, and they'd kind of and they would sort of they'd be passed around your family sort of. But when the 64 kind of happened, that was when the real accrual of games began for you. Yeah. And for me, because it was my first system, that was when the real accrual of games started for me. So there was definitely this aspect of like these growing like superpowers of collections.
But they were still very different. Like
for sure.
I cite things like Iggy's Wrecking Balls and those sorts of things, which I never had. I played when I go around.
And I never got a copy either. That was one of the games that was a big rental. There was Rakuga Kids, which is like a 2D fighter where everything was drawn in like comic style. I guess it was all really cartoony. Which I still Jet Force Gemini is a great. I mean, for me, I love that game. I actually went back and I played that. I think it was last Christmas.
Yeah.
And I smashed through the first 4 worlds in like a couple of hours, and I was like, oh, okay.
I missed this.
Yeah, I do. Like,
still hold up.
For the controller, it does. Yeah, it does.
Because isn't that available in?
It is on the Rare Replay, but the controls for it are real bad. They're real rough. If they had really reworked it and put like maybe like a proper camera on it, it would have been really good.
Yeah. Okay. That's a shame.
Yeah, but I mean, they're porting the game. They're not remastering it. So.
Well, what else were some of those other highlights during that kind of 64 sort of era that we're talking about?
Well, I remember one game that you got me onto, I guess, almost by accident, which was the Mystical Ninja series.
Oh yeah.
You had the first one, which was very much in that Zelda, Mario, Banjo framework of third-person platform reaction adventure game, and I don't even remember if you actually beat it or got even very far in it or had any real interest. No. But for me,
look, I dropped off the 64 after a while. Just as soon as I got my PlayStation, Final Fantasy 7 was there. That was it. But
I think that was even before that.
Yeah, might be relevant.
But yeah, for me, I really like the Japanese-ness of it, I guess. And definitely over the years, I rented the sequel to that, which was a 2D game. I don't know if you ever got a chance to play that one.
You've directed me to some YouTube footage in the past.
Yeah, fantastic music. It's one of my... I think that one, when we did our soundtracks episode last year, I slid that one in there because a great sort of poppy Japanese, like traditional and sort of J-pop style mix. It was great. What else from that 64 era? Jeez. I mean, there was all the sort of racing games like Extreme G and stuff like that. I was a huge fan of that. Like in the second one, you could break the sound barrier and all the sound would stop and...
Just started tripping out.
Well, yeah, it was just like you would hear nothing but like this like gushing wind sound.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But when you were like below that sound barrier, there'd be like insane like pumping like UK 90s dance stuff, like electro techno-y type music, and you'd have like all the computer like missile and just stuff like that, right? Yeah. But then when you break the sound barrier, just all sound gone, which I like would lose my shit over as a little kid, just being like this nice little touch where it's like you just feel like you're doing something super fucking cool, and because it was never really easy to do that, like some of the maybe cheat bikes or whatever could get there, but if you did it on like a regular one, you're just like, oh, I'm the best. You have to take corners perfectly and stuff like that. Iggy's Wrecking Balls that you mentioned is a really spastic, weird game. That game's real hard. Even it's real hard to explain. I could never quite
work it out. I mean, you got opportunities to play it at home. When I'd come by and visit, like I'd give it an hour or so, and I'd get smashed by it.
Yeah, I remember there was Mortal Kombat Trilogy that I had on the 64. I think you had.
Yeah, I've got that too. Yeah.
That was a good bit of fun there. That was because I never had any of the sort of the previous gen where those sort of individual games like 1, 2, and 3 were coming out, and so when Trilogy was there, that was kind of my entrance into that, and I kind of picked that one up a little bit later in its life, because up until I guess I started work, really, I was always maybe a few years behind when the game consoles came out, just because there was no money for me to get it with. So I just sort of save it up over successive
Christmases and birthdays,
stuff like that. And then like I got the GameCube maybe 3 or 4 years before it was dead, and like I got that maybe 2000,
which would have only been like a year after it came out.
No, well, I mean, it came out at 2002, and I think it was done by
Wii was 2006.
2006. So it was out for 4 years, and I maybe got it in 2004. So yeah, maybe 2003. I don't really.
Well, the GameCube was a big console for you.
Yeah, I had a shitload of games for the GameCube,
which is something I was, by this point I'd already spent a lot of time with PlayStation. I had both the GameCube,
and you and I kind of went our separate ways at that point.
Yeah, it's true. Also, at the end of grade 5, so it was basically a year after that whole Pokemon thing sort of went on. Jay went to a different school for your last year of primary school.
It was the last term of primary, the last term of grade 5.
Yeah, so then you did that, and grade 6,
and then grade 6, and everywhere else was high school.
And I went off to a different high school.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
And we'll get to that later, but the kind of where everything kind of crossed over again. But, I'll save that for later.
But during that time, obviously the GameCube was my primary console.
This is the bit that's most interesting to me, because there's a whole portion of kind of my life that of my timeline that I missed of yours.
So during that time, I guess I found that like a lot of the ports were totally fine. I don't know why there's retrospectively all this distaste for the GameCube, because for me, I mean, it was always the most durable console, and there are old
handhold.
There are some old X-Play on G4 TV skits of like how they just destroy all the consoles, and the GameCube just kept on going and stuff like that. And I always remember being like, yeah, that's cool. And I never found any of the ports to be bad. Like I played a lot of the Tony Hawk games. I was a big fan of those.
Yeah.
I played 2 on the PC, believe it or not. Got that in like a box of Nutri-Grain or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Same with number 3, I think. And then some of the like American Wasteland and stuff like that I played on the GameCube. They played fine. There was just this kind of weird period where I was able to like the internet was definitely more there. So I guess this was post Wii launch, but in that sliver of time where that kind of hadn't picked up yet, the PS3 hadn't come out. It was still kind of the tail end of the PS2 era.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I follow you.
The 360 had been out for a little bit, but it hadn't really... Like, it had done its own thing, and people were like, yep, this is the new shit, online gaming and stuff.
And all that sort of
thing. That had kind of come out. This was, 2006, 2007, something like that. But for me, I was still buying GameCube games. And I had access to eBay, and that was when there was that big wave of when that was happening, and... Games like Eternal Darkness and Killer 7 and these really sort of, I guess, games that you wouldn't really see advertisements for.
No, those slightly left of centre sort of games.
But for me, they were amazing. They were some of my just most favourite experiences, I guess, on the GameCube. I mean, Sunshine was fine and Double Dash was alright, and I never really liked Melee, even though I was a big Smash fan. You and I played a lot of Smash on the 64. Yeah. Because I remember in fact, just to duck back in history a little bit, I remember it was an NMS, a Nintendo Magazine System, which is again, I mentioned it before, it's a well and truly defunct magazine.
Yeah.
But I remember getting the issue for Space World 98 or whatever, the one where they announced Mario Party and Smash Brothers at the same time. It was they announced the Space World at that year, and I think maybe also Banjo-Tooie was not too far behind that. Or maybe the original Banjo-Kazooie, something like that.
No, I think you're in the right sort of window there.
Anyway, and I remember reading out about it, because I took the game manuals to school. I would take the magazines to school and I would read them at school at the same time as we'd be playing whatever the fuck we'd be playing as kids do. Obviously being the ADD kid, I was like, yeah, I could totally read this magazine and continue playing this game that we're playing, and I don't know, for me it just worked. And I remember reading out to you and maybe a couple of other people about the Mario Party and the Smash Brothers, and I remember you being super like, that Mario Party sounds like a cool, fun time.
And I played the shit out of it.
Yeah, no, I remember.
And like
listed hands and all that sort of nonsense.
Our place for, I think, youngest sister's birthday. I think it was a gift to her, which caused some problems.
I'm sure it would.
It's mine, I gotta play it. Like, nah. Go to bed.
Yeah. And for me, on the flip side, I was like, from hearing about it initially, I was just like, that game will be something. Mark my words, that game will be the coolest thing that ever is cool.
And I still took your word for it, because the day Smash came out, like, I picked it up launch day.
And
you know, you were proven to be right, and Mario Party was fine for about the first 2 or 3 entries, and then modern day happened. You've seen it.
Yeah, and even going back to those now, boy, do they not hold up.
I haven't, and I won't, because
But that's the thing. Like, I bet it would be way easier to leverage you to go back and play Smash 1.
Oh, easily. Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. It still holds up. Still a great game. Melee, I was never really a fan of. I know that people say that that's the fighting game players won or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, I just found that it was a bit more clunky. Whereas the first one that I'd played for so long, and it was just such an assault of fast just movements. Yeah, pretty much. Whereas Melee, again, it had kind of that fighting game aspect of like slow movements into fighting, like cancelling and all of that sort of stuff. And that was never really me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where that all kind of came from. But one, I suppose, really big aspect of my gaming life between, I guess, when you and I sort of parted ways and before we rejoined into that sort of window. So I guess this would have been around 99, 2000, all the way through to 2007, 2008, 2009.
2008 would have been the year that we met up again.
But for that period in there was a huge... So for me, like I said, at the very height of this, I never had the Super Nintendo, never had an NES, never had any of that stuff. My first owned console, other than like we had a PC that I played some terrible shareware games on.
Yeah.
And Virtual Cop 2, which is a fucking super cool game. if you've never played that in an arcade or anywhere else, mate, it's a great game. Excuse me, sorry, I'm talking a lot. But I never really had any of those sort of early consoles. So I was a big, and again, do what you like and say what you like about it, but I was a big emulator player. I played...
Oh, don't worry, this has been a topic that Damo's discussed in his, that I've discussed in mine. It was wrong, but...
Look,
sue us.
I don't think... For me, again, at that period of time, there was no digital distribution. There was nothing. Yeah. If you didn't have a Super Nintendo, you weren't going to play these games. Yeah. If you didn't have... So for me, NES, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Super Nintendo. I emulated the fuck out of all of them. I had megabytes upon megabytes, because back then that was a large unit of measure. Because like I would download them at high school and bring them home 1.44 megabytes at a time on literally floppy disks. Them and Flash games. There was a lot of Flash games around the Newgrounds era. Yeah. Which that's a whole nother thing of getting into interesting stuff that way. But in terms of that was where I developed my love for games like Mega Man X and Metroid and Super Metroid and all of those sorts of games, Castlevania, like the Castlevanias on the Game Boy Advance, amazing, fantastic. And then just all sorts of shit. That's actually where I got my love for Jet Set Radio from, was I actually managed to stumble across a Game Boy Advance port of the game, which was done by Vicarious Visions, who also did the like Tony Hawk Pro Skater ports of the Game Boy Advance, and it was
now dead.
No, I think they still they do stuff for Activision every now and then.
Actually,
I think there might be
something to do with COD.
Yeah, they might do. I think. But anyway, that they kind of did those, and they did them well. Like the Tony Hawk games on the Game Boy Advance, for what they were actually quite good. And the Jet Set Radio was another one of those. But it had the music, and it had the graffiti, and it had the style, and I just needed to know more. And I kept diving into what it was on the Dreamcast, because no one I knew had a Dreamcast. No one I knew had a Sega Saturn. Barely anyone I knew even had a Mega Drive. Like, it was, I was definitely firmly...
we found ourselves surrounded by
firmly in the Nintendo camp. That's right, yeah.
I think I know one person. Do you remember Calvin? Back in...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did he have a Mega Drive?
I don't remember what Sega, but he definitely had one of some.
Yeah, right. I think a cousin of mine had one.
I played some Sonics on it. And,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool. Mario's better. And walked off.
Yeah, I played some Sonic. I was like, this is interesting.
That was the only time I visited him.
Yeah, well... Yeah. Anyway, moving on from being a bad friend. So that era for me of like when the GameCube was out and emulating a shit ton on my computer, that was like a huge spike in like my gaming appreciation. The stuff that I was interested in really grew in scale.
Yeah.
That was where I found like a lot of interesting stuff to do with like platforming, and that was where I found my love for Metroidvania as a game type. I couldn't put my finger on what it was because the term didn't really exist yet.
Yeah.
But I knew that I loved Super Metroid. I loved exploring around and finding stuff and having my progress gated without really knowing that it was gated, and just having this huge map that I could explore. Like games like Aria of Sorrow or Dawn of Sorrow, whichever one of the two Sorrow games on the Game Boy Advance, Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance, all of those ones, the Castlevanias on the Game Boy Advance, all of those really spurred on like my love for that game style, and again, like I was able to fill in, like I was able to play games like Donkey Kong Country and some weird Japanese Dragon Ball Z games, and F-Zero, and because at this point I'd picked up like an old copy of F-Zero X for the 64 that I got when the video store in Gisborne shut down. I managed to pick up a copy of F-Zero X for like $10.
I missed that wholesale.
Oh, it was great. I made a steal. The one game I didn't get, Iggy's Wrecking Balls, which I was really disappointed about.
In retrospect, probably no great.
No, I mean, yeah.
But at the time,
you're probably right, but there's still a part of me that's disappointed. Yeah. But anyway, that all aside, that was a huge, really important sort of part for me there.
So I guess we're still just gradually inching our way forward, and we're kind of into this period, this mid to late-ish 2000s period where we did kind of meet up again. And
so do you want me to?
Go on. Yeah, kind of you tell the story.
So, the way that kind of happened is I, straight out of high school, went to do games design, and it wasn't really for me at that point, because I don't know, there was this weird feeling of knowing how it worked kind of ruined the magic to a degree.
Yeah.
And I guess that was probably me being still pretty young at the time, not really understanding what it all meant or how
it all ultimately came together.
But not just that, but how that could potentially spur on a different kind of interest in games.
Yeah.
Whereas now, after seeing all that stuff and being more mature about it now, I can look at it and I can actually really appreciate good game design principles. But that's only because I've done that stuff.
Well, before you kind of progress with it further, that's one of I think the great things about kind of the dynamic that when we're all here that we have going with patched episodes, in that you look at it through that sort of lens. I am all over kind of the news and the numbers and that sort of thing, and Damo brings the more enthusiastic, just the energy side, but with not necessarily...
It's true, I am dead inside.
No, I'm not. No, that's not like that at all. But like, there's probably 3 key pillars to what you kind of see in the gaming communities as it is. In that there's those who've got the numbers, and I can cite numbers, and I'll throw those numbers at you until you believe that that's fact. Like that's there. You can talk about the game development principles, and then Damo is the energy and the enthusiasm that you tend to get in those sort of things. I think you bring that to those podcasts actually is something like that one piece. Like I think if you take away any of those 1-3 pieces, it changed the whole dynamic, and you miss certain
for sure.
portions of communities that are missing. So it's like really interesting that you went through that whole period, and I kind of met you part of the way, or re-met you, part of the way through.
Yeah.
That.
So after that sort of didn't sort of turn out, at least at that point, because I mean back then we would, like, part of our work was to just mod using the UT engine. This is before real games design studies kind of were really cemented.
Yeah.
Now it's full fledged. I mean, you can see the independent studios popping up, being the perfect example of, okay, I was just ahead of that wave. Had I been born a couple of years later, there would be much better stuff that maybe life would be different. But it is what it is. But again, with that in mind, from there I then went to the opposite side of. So I was living obviously here. We go into the city, to Melbourne. So I was here, actually, in this town at the time that we're in right now. You were still out Gisborne way.
Yeah.
And then I went to Bendigo to do some TAFE study in just general multimedia, because I was still potentially thinking, all right, well, maybe there's something in the field that I've chosen that might still interest me. And so I got in there, and that was all fine. And then I think you and I just bumped into you at the.
It was on the train.
At the train platform.
Because you were getting on one stop before me. So I would then, I'd get on at Gisborne and walk through the train.
I think it might have been at the train platform on the way home.
It would have been my second year of uni.
Yes, it would have. Yeah, because I did that
1 year.
That 2007.
So this is my second year of uni. I'm heading in because I was doing my teaching course, and I'm walking through the train. And I see you sitting there. Because we'd only bumped into one another every now and then. Like, our family's kind of attending church every, say, Christmas.
Yeah, that was
a
Christmas mass or whatever.
And that'd be something, I'd see you there, but then neither of us really attended throughout the course of the year, so, that'd be it.
But I'm pretty sure the first
half an hour
time...
before we get told to shut up and be respectful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure it was it was a train on the way home one time that I'm pretty sure you and I bumped into each other, and we had kind of the whole sort of train ride home, and I think that's sort of where we figured out that, okay, there are some of these train rides where you and I take the same one, and it just was that we'd never really bumped into each other in the morning or whatever.
And it was that second year as well that you met Damo for the first.
Yes, that's right.
A couple of my train trips with Damo synced up, but then a few of yours synced up going the other way. Damo's hours, he was 1 year behind me in terms of his course.
But yeah, there was I think one.
Yeah, a couple of mine
classes.
synced up with you, and that was cool. We got to talk, kind of leverage a bit more of the past, whilst you and Dan are kind of learning one another's interests and that sort of thing in that regard too. And they were different train times, and sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes all three of us to be on the same one. We tried to kind of manipulate it a little bit.
Yeah.
Someone had to skip a uni class every now and then.
Yeah, and it was yeah.
to catch the trip back and talk about games for an hour.
I think it was just that they were really early ones, because I think one of my classes changed and it became really
Crack of
early.
Dawn one,
Yeah, and I think that was the one, that Crack of Dawn one, because that was the only chance anyone could get anywhere by 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that most of my classes started at 10, but then we had one. Yeah, but then we had one class that started at, and we'd have to get in there at 8:15, which you would need to be getting on at 7 something to get there.
Yeah, just a touch before 7.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's kind of how that happened, and then we sort of picked up where we left off, really.
Yeah, I think for you and I, for the most part, didn't really miss a beat. But at the same time, I was learning about a lot of the different things. I hadn't changed much in terms of my interests.
No, you were still super into JRPGs.
Zelda, platformers. It was almost kind of that period there where, because I'd picked up my PS3 and I got Resistance as a launch title. Again, you can see all this in last week's episode, but that's where I kind of rekindled the friendship with you at about the same time that I was starting to pick up new things and explore new things, but most of what I had to talk about was the same stuff that you'd known for years.
Yeah, on the PS2 there was...
Look at Star Fox on the DS here, look at Robo...
Oh, Custom Robo,
thanks.
Oh, that was a little after,
DS.
but...
And there were things like, I'm going... Like, I had no idea.
What is this? I don't even. But, even like Kirby Superstar Deluxe, because that was another big one that I had on the Super Nintendo as an emulator, was Kirby Superstar. And when they put out that sort of updated version, I lost my shit. I was fucking just blind with just joy of loving that game series.
But the big gaming binges were able to resume then too, because at this point I've got my license, so I can just drive over to your place.
Well,
or you got dropped over at mine, and just Borderlands or whatever it happened to be for hours and hours.
Before that, even like I was getting you into stuff like F-Zero GX on the GameCube and stuff that you'd kind of like you knew about because you were up with a lot of the gaming news at that time.
I recognised names but didn't have a ton of money.
But you were just like, I wouldn't normally consider this, but it's like crazy because that was the thing. Like for me, that was after I'd picked up that copy of F-Zero X for the 64, like well and truly after its life cycle. I was then called, hey, this thing's coming out, bang, get it. It's being made by Daytona Team? Fuck yeah, sure.
Yeah, right.
And that type of stuff. So, and I guess not long after that, I actually had a school excursion, or like a TAFE excursion, and we were going to the Game On
exhibit in Melbourne.
Which was basically a games history retrospective. I think you either had a day off or you cut class or whatever it was.
No, I had a day off. It was just I didn't have class.
Yeah, and so I invited you along.
God bless the uni lifestyle.
And well, yeah, that was the thing. I had class every day, and you had your contact hours, and that it was what it was.
Yeah.
But I invited you along, and we all went to the city for this exhibition, and we also went to Dungeon Crawl.
You stuck me into the thing as kind of
as one of our students.
I just walked through. We were discussing this for probably the 2 days before, like, how we'd make it work because I didn't have a ton of money, and we just see what we can do. So I jumped on the train with you guys, and I just followed a lot of you the entire time. So it was very Assassin's Creed style. The only thing I didn't do was walk in kind of like a monk. That I just basically walked straight in with the middle of your group.
I think one of the teachers
broke off from you for that brief period when we were getting in and just walked straight through the middle and just...
Yeah,
Acme.
I think one of the teachers kind of half pulled me up on it. I was just like... And I think they were... Like, I was on pretty good terms with them, and I think they were just like, yeah, whatever.
But they probably weren't aware that I didn't pay.
No, they were absolutely aware. Yeah, really? they were just like, oh, whatever. Like, I could see that you're all into the same stuff, so it's fine.
Can we convince him to join the course and
maybe
take some money from him?
Maybe.
And I became a teacher.
Yeah. Well, yeah, full circle. But yeah, and I remember that day being really important for me personally. Not just because it was your first time you went. I think you picked up either you or my other mate picked up a sealed copy of Final Fantasy VII that was a non-platinum. It was just a straight up sealed copy of FF7.
Yeah,
that might have been you?
No, actually no, it would have been your other mates. No, I picked it up from Sefton. So okay. No.
Yeah, right. Because that was back in Dungeon Crawl's sort of real heyday of...
It's a little Melbourne indie game store that was...
It would just import the coolest shit. Like, it would just...
You introduced it to me that same day. That was my first day seeing it.
Yeah, so I think I came across it in the year previous, 2007, and I was able to pick up stuff for the GameCube that used, like, action replay cards and shit like that. I was able to get US stuff, which I don't think that was really your thing at the time. But yeah, so that kind of introduced me to this whole concept of importing. So I got a whole bunch of UK stuff, and that's what I'm talking about, like the whole sort of heyday of eBay. And I think Dungeon Crawl kind of fed into that, because they were just selling action replay discs on the fucking shelves.
They didn't care.
They didn't give a fuck, yeah, and that was awesome. And I sort of got mates with the people that were running it there and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, they kind of learned who I was via you initially, and so then when I'd come in. And then I started for a while. Then Mum would start coming along with me, and she got to know who they were. So then, didn't matter whether it was you wandering in, or me with you, or me on my own, or me with Mum, whatever it was. Didn't matter. They just recognised any and all of us, and were always really happy to help. I mean, they were always. Their customer service was always pretty good anyway.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember a whole bunch of times.
If they didn't have it there, we'll see what we can do. We'll try and get you a copy.
Yeah, bang, done. And they always sort of came through.
Yeah.
And I remember a bunch of times I would go in there and they'd be playing this really cool game and they'd just be like, here, play. And I'd just fucking just play for 20, 30 minutes.
It wasn't like your typical, your EB games or Game or GameStop or whatever, from whatever region you're from.
Yeah, they'd just throw in a disc and be like, hey, you want to see this?
No, it's like, yeah, try it. We've got a copy at the back here. Let's use this one. This is the one we're messing around with.
This is my copy. It's, we're selling it. You're just here, check it out. Try it, play it. And, whatever. I probably bought a bunch of extra games as a result, so whatever. And
try before you buy works. Give us demos, PlayStation, Xbox.
And then so from there, in that year, I bought my Wii. So that in early 2008, I picked up my Wii. And that was when one of the biggest game franchises for me popped out, which was No More Heroes.
Yeah.
Which I remember for a long time there, I was reading the game manual on the way home. I'm pretty sure you were there when I bought it.
Yep.
And I remember reading the manual, and "Good morning, my son" became one of our catchphrases for a while, which was just a ridiculous little comic strip that they had in there.
Yeah.
And again, like, that's sort of where my love for Grasshopper Manufacture came from. And
for all that I was there with you the day that you got No More Heroes, I never really kind of bought into the whole thing. Like, it took a lot of convincing to give me a go.
Well, so that was the period where I too was, I guess, keeping up with all the news. Like, that was when I was...
It took a leaf out of my book in some regards.
Pretty much, yeah. And it was probably because you and I had caught up, and I had someone super invested in gaming for me to be able to share that with, because I hadn't really up to that point. And then when you and I kind of hit it off, and GameSpot was kind of in its like absolute peak, king of the internet status,
Gerstmann and all them.
Yeah, exactly. And so at that period of time, like, there was a lot of shit happening. Like, I'd had a lot of chats in high school about the revolution, and it was interesting, and then there was all the backwards compatibility, so it kind of seemed like a no-brainer. And there was a few games like Mad World and No More Heroes, and some really interesting Wii games that came out. Stuff like even
De Blob, and even some of those more abstract ones. So.
And what was that first-person shooter that was kind of mediocre?
Oh, the Conduit.
No, the other one. Red Steel. Even Red Steel 2 was kind of interesting. Yeah. Like, it had an interesting art style, and I appreciate what they were going for with the whole sword and gun stuff. Which is still a cool concept, and if someone...
Which is good for you, because you felt burnt by Twilight Princess.
I did, yes.
Not that we'll dive into it for too long, because we've got other things.
I never really liked...
It didn't gel with you.
No, and I still say it's one of my least liked Zeldas. Whereas on the flip side, like, I went back and I played the Wind Waker, I think... It would have been in a similar time, and like, for me, I remember being like, oh, that kind of looks a little lame when I first saw the art style, because like, I was in high school, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's
like,
it's weird and strange.
A lot of kids at the time, it was like, oh, this is a step back, not really appreciating.
But not even that. It was like, oh, that's weird, but I don't have a console to experiment it, so I just had weird feelings for it. But then when I went back and played it, I remember just being like, this is actually really fucking cool. It's interesting. And then I got to the collecting the Triforce pieces and never finished it. So I've still never finished the Wind Waker, because I've only ever played it on the GameCube. And
I suppose you don't have a Wii U. I was going to say, I'll send you the remastered version, because that fixes that up. It's
I've heard.
It's just amazing.
And then, I mean, I guess from there, at that Game On Expo, I got my hands on a 360 controller, and I played Burnout Paradise.
And then you never stopped playing Burnout Paradise?
No,
not just that day, but then for the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, I went out and I bought a 360 with like basically all the coins I had to my name for that game. For exactly that game.
Well, that was in the window that I kind of got. I was probably maybe another 6 months after you before I got my 360. Because I picked up mine just prior to Fable 2 and Gears 2.
Okay. Yeah, right.
So I got a bundle that had Halo 3.
Didn't you get a red ring? I thought you had one and got a red ring, and then...
I did get a red ring. It took a while before that happened. You and I were midway through a Borderlands game online.
Oh,
and then I started to have some issues, and I was sent. Well, this is back then when, like, the best thing for us, like, we were sitting there with our headsets, and the best thing for us to convey what was going on was not, like, we didn't have our Facebooks and all that sort of crap.
Text messages.
We're sending photos on our phone going, this is what I'm seeing on my thing, and it's real grainy photos.
That's right.
Remember, it showed up on my Borderlands screen. The game was starting to distort on the screen. Everything was going weird. Right. I had a really good run with it. It lasted a fair while, because I got the Elite.
Yeah.
And it had a good run, but midway through a Borderlands session, all of a sudden the screen, everything started to warp on the screen, and like, this isn't good. And then the next time I played it, or went to go play it, red ring, had to pry the disc out.
Yeah, and I remember you wrapped it in a towel, and that worked for a while.
Yeah, I tried that little trick, and yeah, it did. That bought me a little bit more time, but
yeah. But I guess that's kind of like pretty much from there was when I really got, I guess, heavy into mainstream gaming, and I picked up a lot.
And you aligned with Xbox, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I was, yeah. Because I never really had a PlayStation. I never really liked their controllers.
Yeah.
I never really, and I still.
And you're still not a massive fan of a lot of their IP either, for the most part. There's a few exceptions, but
I never had the PS2 experience. I never really had the heyday. Like if I
PS2 is not the heyday, but
no,
but I follow what you mean though.
But I disagree with you. I would say that the end of PS1, early PS2 was when it got, like, the PlayStation and Sony got some of their biggest IPs. Like, you can say you're Uncharted.
No, I was going to say PS1 is that's it. PS2,
but I mean, when I think
PS2
of it,
was a drop off. PS3 was kind of
when I think about it, I think of like Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter.
Yeah.
Like, they were all PS2 games, from my knowledge.
Yeah.
And even God of War, that was a PS2 game as well. Like, all of those sorts of characters. I mean, you've got your Ape Escape, your Parappa the Rapper, your Metal Gear Solid, stuff like that. You're right, that is. But I mean, Metal Gear Solid, while it sold gangbusters, Metal Gear Solid 2 on the PS2 was what rocketed it into this is a phenomenon. And then obviously the bait and switch that I don't even know if you know what the bait and switch is for Metal Gear Solid 2.
If you told me what it was, I'd recall what you're talking about. But
the Raiden bait and switch.
Oh yeah, I think.
Then I'm not gonna say any further because
I think we won't say it on camera.
No, in case spoilers. It's only 20 years old.
Statute of limitations probably up, but whatever.
Anyway, like all of that sort of stuff, I never really experienced that on the PS2, and I had a PS3 for maybe 6 to 8 months. Never played it. Never touched it.
Yeah.
To the point that I think the batteries got fucked up in the controller because it never got used.
Yeah.
And so now I've come full circle and finally bought a PS4 in the last month.
We haven't had a chance to address that actually.
No, we haven't. Which we'll touch on that.
We'll do that
more
when Damo's
other
back.
GameStop stuff. But that's the thing. So I never really had. So I was never anti that stuff.
God, I'm gonna just throw a ton of games. I suppose you did have a PS3, but it never really captured you.
No.
You end up giving it to the family, and they used it kind of as a Blu-ray player.
Yeah, which they sporadically use now. I guess whatever.
Which is why you use Blu-ray when you can go digital.
Yeah, true. Or YouTube or anything like that. Netflix, etc. But anyway, kind of the 360 was when I really was able to open it up and really take a look at it and look at some interesting, different stuff. Like I was huge into the arcade races of like, and I had a lot of that on the GameCube. I had like Need for Speed, Most Wanted, like the first one.
Yeah.
Underground 2. What was the one that came after it? Carbon or maybe whatever.
Yeah.
Those sorts of games, and then there was also like some of the Tony Hawk Pro Skaters where I was able to get new music, and that helped my taste in music. That and Brutal Legend, which I then got later on the 360, and I was able to get some old. Because there was a very select few set of games that was backwards compatible with the Xbox original.
Yeah.
Jet Set Radio Future, which was my first Jet Set Radio game that I owned.
Yeah.
I didn't get a copy of the original because, I mean, at that stage... Exactly. This was before HD remakes. This is before that tidal wave of HD remakes. So I never got a copy of that, but I had Jet Set Radio Future. And because I was interested in all the sort of cutscenes and everything I had for that, when it was first being launched, when I had my GameCube, and I'm like, I'm seeing this shit on the Xbox, and I'm like, I want, but I can't have. And then I originally got that, and then I got Psychonauts, which was a game I stumbled across the demo in about 2005. I tried to install on my computer and try and break my computer's clock so I could keep playing the demo and all sorts of shit. And I was able to then go back and really expand on and kind of cement, I guess, now where my tastes lie. So a lot of that emulator stuff helped me to figure out like what I like about like pixel art, what type of stuff with pixel art I like, and sort of old game design principles and things like Metroidvanias and stuff like that. But then I guess the GameCube, Wii, and 360 were able to really inform me about what I liked, and also like the anime that I was watching at the time about the weird sort of esoteric, even Japanese stuff that I would really come to like. Stuff like there was Killer 7, and there was No More Heroes, and then there was there was a lot of anime that I was watching,
Yeah, there
and
was kind of a
there was
theme
Trigun in
going
there
across the
somewhere, and all of that sort of stuff. And then you've got stuff like the 360, which a game I went back and looked at in the last couple of weeks, even Ashura's Wrath, which is a fantastic game, which I'm probably going to force you guys to play at some stage. It's actually really good. It plays like an anime series. Like if you can enjoy Dragon Ball and some of the ridiculousness of that, it's actually really good. The game is designed as an anime series.
We'll give it a go. We'll see it.
It's good.
We'll cross
fun.
that bridge when we come to it.
It's sci-fi cross like Japanese god stuff. It's really interesting. Anyway, that aside, just all of that sort of stuff. And I guess that sort of brings us into the now of like, my music taste has gone from being, I guess, generic rock into like heavy metal, which was around the time that there was Brutal Legend, and I was informed about all that sort of stuff, even to some of my dad's music from like 70s hard rock and all of that sort of stuff. Moving into, I guess, the more sort of punk rock and psych rock and stoner rock. Well, actually, it would have been the other way around. Psych rock, stoner rock.
Yeah.
That type of stuff, like Queens of the Stone Age and Caius and things like that, into, I guess, punk rock, which then sort of, I guess, had this huge crossover point with my gaming when Sunset Overdrive came.
Yeah.
And was waiting in the wings. And again, just like I had
Prompted you to get an Xbox One.
Just like I had that moment with Burnout Paradise where I played it, saw it, and I'm like, I need this in my life.
Is that from when we played it at...
No, that was more because we'd sort of started to do E3
Yeah, that's true.
again. I'd seen it coming, and I'm like, this is probably going to happen. And then the game hit, and within 3 months I had an Xbox One.
Yeah. That's right. Now I recall.
So that pretty much takes us up to today, I guess.
So where do you see things headed from here? This is a very, very open question, but I got a surprising answer from Damo, so go back and watch that at some point. But.
In terms of where my tastes will go?
Yeah, where do you see things headed? Especially now that, and we'll talk more about what you're currently playing when it comes to your PS4 when we do our next patch updates, but where do you kind of see things headed from here? Like, is it going to be a similar sort of thing where, when you had your emulators, you're like, okay, I'm going to go back and try this, and this.
I guess there probably
PS4,
is.
Let's go back and explore this and this and this and look at these.
I guess there probably is one more step that I've not really talked about, which is, I guess, from the last 4 to 5 years where I've kind of hit that indie stride as well, which was... Because you and I we really started, once I sort of moved out, I guess, which was around 2011, you and I started playing a lot of online games. I mean, we smashed the shit out of Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 1, and even games like Battle Block Theatre and stuff like that, which were Castle Crashers, things like that, which were little indie titles. And from my first housemate, mate of mine, really good dude by the name of Pete, he got me into stuff like Terraria and things like that, sort of in the earlier days of Steam, to the point where there would just be days where I'd just take them off work and we'd just fucking play Terraria and do shit like that. Even some Team Fortress and stuff like that. So there was kind of that, and then when this sort of indie scene, and then after that, I guess the Kickstarter scene, and then the even bigger indie scene that followed that.
You and I jumped on a few Kickstarters at the
beginning. And look, I regret not many of them. Even ones that I backed.
Even Fail is like Mighty Number 9.
Yeah, I mean, I backed that, and I guess that's kind of a disappointment. But again, that was a disappointment for me for different reasons.
Yeah,
it was because it was being shown as Mega Man, and it wasn't. No, it wasn't, and it wasn't good. It was a bad game. But then, like, there's the Double Fine RTS game. I backed it.
Is that Massive Chalice?
Massive Chalice, yeah. I backed it, and I got game codes and everything. Still never played it.
Yeah.
I don't have any interest because I like the concept. I don't regret backing that. But then on the flip side, Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
And I got onto Shovel Knight through... I was a big fan of, and still am, of Game Grumps and Eager Raptor, who's an old...
Yeah.
Again, sort of touching back on Newgrounds. He was an animator back there, and he was sort of I saw a post or something on Facebook, and I looked it up, and I'm like, that shit's fucking... And I remember sending a message to you, being like, you need to get the fuck on this too.
I was starting to hear about it because of, may he rest in peace in terms of his game industry business, Colin Moriarty, from Kind of Funny IGN, because they went to him specifically out the gate because they knew this was the sort of game he would always get up on a pedestal and shout to the masses about. So they got onto him, and he was basically the first in terms of the media scene was doing. And I was listening to Beyond, so I'd heard the name uttered a few times. Then when you kind of dropped it on me, like, maybe I need to give this thing a look.
I think you then did, and very promptly threw down dollars.
Yeah.
And I guess, so from there's been a lot of, I guess, indie stuff, and that's kind of, a lot of that has come full circle with a lot of my games enjoyment, where, shit like Axiom Verge, which is like this very pixely, very, Metroid, very Castlevania-y, Metroidvania.
Yeah.
Throwback, but not. Like, it's its own thing, and it's all of those old design principles that I enjoy. And because, again, like, and as you've sort of seen through a lot of the stuff that we've done, I'm very mechanics heavy, I'm very game design heavy, I'm very, like, I mean, I guess you could say I'm action heavy, but, like, if there's an interesting game mechanic, then that will hook me more in a lot of cases than story, because the story has to be really fucking good for me to be interested. Like, Yakuza Zero's story is fucking super great.
Yeah.
It's this super pulpy, mafia story. That's awesome. But also you can suplex the shit out of people, and that's the coolest fucking thing ever, right?
You were showing me that footage on YouTube well before the game. You'd actually picked up the console or the game itself.
But the first thing I saw about that was a story thing. So there is that. But in terms of that now, I guess from where I go from here is probably where the games industry is headed in a lot of ways backwards, I guess. Like, trying to
looking back,
trying to recapture a lot of the stuff that's lost, because I think there's now this huge, I guess, repulsion towards all of the finance stuff, all of the bad sort of business practices of like HD, like unnecessary HD remakes, and like pre-order bonuses and season passes that don't really give you what a season pass used to.
People are really picking the teeth out of those things more and more, which they should, and holding those publishers to account.
And a lot of people are now, they're developing the games that they love. So again, like, you look at stuff like Shovel Knight, or even the guys at Way Forward who used to be like together with the guys who became Yacht Club, and with their Shantae stuff, and like both of those are very strong, very great, nicely reviewed Metroidvania games. Well, I mean, Shantae is, whereas you've got your Mega Man from your Shovel Knight. Like, both of those are very, very strong influences on me and my gaming interests. And I mean, you've also got Iga bringing out his Bloodstained, which is again another Metroidvania. So like, a lot of that sort of stuff, I feel like a lot of where the interesting stuff in video games is going is kind of where I've always been. So in a sense, I don't really feel like it's where I'm going. I kind of feel like I'm in the lucky seat. Yeah, I feel like I'm in the very lucky seat of being able to be like, I like all these things, and the games industry is actually turning on its head and coming towards catering for me.
There's still a lot of that big stuff, and there always will be, but it's...
For sure, but I think that we're kind of at this crash point where you can't just be... Like, people will call you on your bullshit of making the same shit over and over again, and it just doesn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
And looking forward, it's going to fly less and less. And I think all the smart game designers and game developers out there who just want to do cool shit, I think they will be the ones that really rake in the dollars and really cater towards people like myself.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky in that. I don't feel like my tastes are going to change a huge amount, because I feel like I'm pretty confident where they are. And again, like, I know when I see a game whether I'm going to enjoy it or not. Yeah. And that's generally held true. Like, if I looked at Shovel Knight and I'm like, that is going to be a really fucking great game. I came out the end of that and I'm like, that was a really great fucking game.
Yeah.
And same with Axiom Verge. I remember the first time I saw that tiny little snippet in the Sony thing, I'm like, that fucking thing is going to be the coolest shit ever. And you were just like... And then it came out and it was the fucking coolest shit ever. Like, that type of stuff. And I really feel like I'm very lucky in that I almost feel like there are definitely elements of the game industry that are catering towards my tastes.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm probably just going to ride the wave of where all that goes. And if it doesn't work out, then
Oh, look, you've still picked up other things along the way, your Bloodborns and stuff that you're liking as well. Which,
well, yeah.
Again, we can check any patch updates and whatnot that you'll find heaps
the reason I like Bloodborne is because it's a fucking Metroidvania.
Yeah.
It is. It is huge, one giant area that's all interwoven into itself, and you need to do certain things to be able to progress. It's just got kind of some of that Dark Souls-y combat to it, but it's very fast combat. I can't play Dark Souls because it's too slow and lumbering, and in some ways it's punishing. Like, I like the idea of Bloodborne because it rewards you for taking the offensive, and that is more where I'm at. I'm more like, if I'm going to play a game like that, I want it to be a bit more mashy, a bit more like aggressive.
Yeah.
Whereas Dark Souls feels a bit more passive for me. But again, it's like, it's aggressive Dark Souls combat in a fucking giant, like, old god, like Metroidvania. That's what it is. So, like, the more that stuff gets re-injected into games, I think the happier I'll be. And again, seeing stuff now, even with the Switch and a lot of Japanese stuff really picking it back up again, like having that, which you haven't really seen since like PS2 and GameCube era, that really cool Japanese stuff, it's on fire again.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting for me. So that stuff I think is really, really interesting. And and again, this year already has been a great example of that, and I think that it will continue to be a really good example of what they're going to do to really reinvigorate games as a whole.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess on that note, we better wrap things up because you've got a bus I've got to get to in a bit over 5 minutes. But that is story time for the month now. We've covered all three of us, so make sure to visit the site player2.net.au, player2au on Twitter, PaulJamesP2 on Twitter. Jay's there if you want to look for him, but as he's regularly said, he doesn't really put anything on Twitter, so
I don't even use my personal Facebook.
Don't kind of worry about that too much.
You can find me on PlayStation now. I am there.
Yeah, he is there. He'll talk more about that in the updates, so we'll save that till then. But until next week, where we'll do an update. Hopefully all three of us are all here and ready to go, and it'll be awesome. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you later.